Sir, I'm going to need you to step back from the entrance. This is a private function. I was invited. I don't care what you think you were told. You are not entering this building until I say so. Security, hold him at the gate.
That was the moment Principal Richard Davenport made the worst decision of his 22-year career in education. Standing at the front entrance of Winthrop Academy, one of Boston's most prestigious private schools, he looked at a black man in a dark jacket and jeans carrying a small gift bag and decided he did not belong. What Davenport did not know, what he never bothered to find out, was that the man standing quietly at his gate was Elijah Turner, entrepreneur, philanthropist, founder of the Turner Opportunity Foundation, and the single individual whose $4.2 million donation had paid for the very science wing whose ribbon Davenport was about to cut. The building bore no name on its facade because Turner had specifically declined the honor. He did not want recognition. He wanted his daughter to have a proper chemistry lab. By the end of that afternoon, Davenport would be removed from the stage in front of 300 parents, alumni, and members of the local press. Within 72 hours, an emergency session of the Winthrop Academy Board of Trustees would vote unanimously to place him on indefinite administrative leave pending a full investigation into his conduct. Within 3 months, 8 additional complaints of discriminatory behavior, spanning 6 years and involving families of color across 3 grade levels, would surface from school records that had been filed and never acted upon. Davenport's name would become synonymous with a viral moment that redefined how private institutions in New England addressed racial bias on their campuses. But before all of that happened, Elijah Turner was just a father trying to walk through a door. If you have ever been made to feel that you do not belong in a space where you have every right to be, whether it was a school, a workplace, a restaurant, or a neighborhood, share your story in the comments. And if you believe that no child should ever have to watch a parent be humiliated for the color of their skin, hit that subscribe button and help us keep telling these stories. Now, let us go back to where it all began. Elijah Turner grew up in Roxbury, a neighborhood in Boston that most Winthrop Academy families could not find on a map if you paid them. His mother worked 2 jobs, night shift at a packaging facility and weekends behind the register at a laundromat on Blue Hill Avenue. His father left when Elijah was 4. There was no trust fund. There was no legacy admission. There was a library card, a secondhand calculator, and a mother who told him every single morning that his brain was the one thing nobody could take from him. He believed her. He held on to those words the way some children hold on to stuffed animals, not because they fix anything, but because they make the dark feel smaller. Elijah earned a full scholarship to MIT at 17. He was the only black student in his freshman engineering cohort. He ate lunch alone for the first 3 months until a professor named Dr. Adaora Obi, a Nigerian-born electrical engineer who had tenure and 0 patience for institutional inertia, pulled him into her research lab and told him he had the sharpest instinct for circuit design she had seen in a decade. By 23, he had a master's degree in electrical engineering and a business plan scribbled on the back of a utility bill. At 26, he founded Turner Tech Solutions, a company that designed affordable diagnostic equipment for rural hospitals and underfunded clinics. The idea was simple. Medical technology should not cost $250,000 when it could cost $30,000. Hospitals in Mississippi, West Virginia, and the Pine Ridge Reservation were his first clients. Within 5 years, Turner Tech had contracts with state health departments in 14 states. Within 10, it had gone international. By the time Elijah was 41, Forbes had profiled him twice, and his net worth sat comfortably above $90 million. But none of that mattered to him as much as his daughter. Amara Turner was 11 years old. She had her father's quiet intensity and her late mother's laugh, a sound Elijah carried in his memory, like a photograph he could not bear to put away. Elijah's wife, Michelle, had passed from pancreatic cancer when Amara was 6. Since then, it had been the two of them. Elijah had restructured his entire corporate schedule around school drop-offs, science fair preparations, and Saturday morning pancakes that Amara critiqued like a professional food reviewer. Amara attended Winthrop Academy on a scholarship that Elijah could have easily paid out of pocket. But he had enrolled her through the standard financial aid process, using the address of his late mother's apartment in Roxbury, which he still owned and maintained, because he wanted Amara to earn her place the same way he had earned his. He did not want her growing up believing that money was the key that opened doors. He wanted her to know that her mind opened them. That decision had a consequence Elijah did not anticipate. Almost no one at Winthrop knew who he was. To the school, Amara Turner was a scholarship student. Her father was listed in the system as a small business owner. He drove a 10-year-old Honda Accord to drop-offs. He wore plain clothes. He spoke softly. He never attended the cocktail fundraisers or the annual gala where parents in designer suits wrote 5-figure checks and had their names printed in the program. He was invisible in the way that black men without visible wealth are invisible in spaces built for old money. 6 months before the incident, Amara had come home from school frustrated. She told her father that her chemistry teacher, Mr. Peterson, had to cancel an experiment because 3 of the 4 Bunsen burners in the lab were broken, and the school had not replaced them in 2 years. The fume hood did not work. The microscopes were from the early 2000s. Amara said the 8th graders had started calling the science wing the museum. Elijah did not say much that evening. He made dinner. He helped Amara with her math homework. He tucked her in. The next morning, he called the Turner Opportunity Foundation and asked them to draft a proposal for Winthrop Academy's Board of Trustees. The proposal was simple. The foundation would fund the complete demolition and reconstruction of the school's science wing, including state-of-the-art laboratory equipment, a dedicated STEM library, a greenhouse for biological studies, and 25 new scholarships for low-income students across the district. Total cost, $4.2 million. The only conditions were that the building would carry no donor name and that the scholarships would be administered by a committee that included at least 2 current scholarship families. The board accepted within a week. They did not know the foundation's primary benefactor was the quiet man in jeans who dropped his daughter off every morning in a Honda. The morning of the grand opening was a Saturday in late October. The air had that crisp New England bite that turns breath visible and makes everything feel slightly more formal. Winthrop Academy's campus, 32 acres of manicured grounds, brick buildings with ivy so thick it looked painted on, and a wrought iron gate that had been standing since 1897, was dressed for the occasion. White tents dotted the courtyard. A podium stood before the entrance to the new science wing, draped in the school's navy and gold colors. A brass plaque beside the door read, "The Science and Discovery Center, dedicated to every student who asks why." By 10:15 a.m., nearly 300 people had gathered on the main lawn. Parents in wool coats and cashmere scarves milled around with coffee cups from the catering tent. Reporters from the Boston Globe, WGBH, and 2 local affiliates set up cameras near the podium. Alumni who had driven in from Connecticut and New York exchanged business cards. Members of the Board of Trustees moved through the crowd in clusters of 2 and 3, shaking hands with practiced precision. Inside the building, students from Amara's class, most of them dressed in the school's formal uniform of navy blazers and gray slacks, stood in neat rows near the lobby windows, waiting for the ceremony to begin. Amara was among them. She wore a small silver pendant her mother had given her, and she kept touching it with her thumb, the way she always did when she was nervous. Principal Richard Davenport stood near the front entrance in a charcoal suit and burgundy tie. He was 54 years old, tall, thin-lipped, with gray hair combed back in a style that had not changed since his first administrative appointment in 2004. He had been principal of Winthrop for 11 years, long enough to consider the school an extension of himself. He knew every donor by first name. He knew which families had endowed which chairs. He knew the parking lot hierarchy, the Porsches and Range Rovers near the entrance, the Subarus and Toyotas farther back. What he also knew, or believed he knew, was who belonged on his campus and who did not. Davenport had accumulated a quiet reputation among families of color at Winthrop, nothing overt, nothing that would survive a formal complaint. But there were patterns. A Haitian mother who said Davenport asked her if she was here for catering during a parent-teacher night. A Korean father who was asked to show his ID twice at a school concert, while white parents walked in unchecked. An email from a black alumnus in 2021 who wrote to the board describing Davenport's reflexive suspicion toward non-white visitors. The email was acknowledged and filed. No action was taken. 6 complaints in 6 years, each one absorbed into the institution like water into stone. On this particular Saturday morning, Davenport was in high spirits. The ribbon cutting was his moment. He had drafted his speech himself. 12 minutes on the school's commitment to innovation, its forward-thinking community, and its dedication to excellence without boundaries. He had rehearsed it in the mirror that morning. He planned to thank the foundation by name and acknowledge the anonymous donor whose generosity had made it all possible. He did not plan to meet that donor at the gate. Elijah Turner arrived at Winthrop Academy at approximately 10:20 a.m. He parked his Honda 3 blocks away because the school's parking lot was full. He walked toward the front entrance wearing a dark navy jacket, a plain gray t-shirt, dark jeans, and black boots. He carried a small gift bag. Inside was a framed photograph of Amara at age 7, standing in front of a cardboard model of the solar system she had built for her first science fair. He planned to give it to her after the ceremony. He did not carry an invitation because the board chair, Dr. Patricia Langford, had told him personally that his name would be on the guest list and that he would be escorted to a reserved seat in the front row. As Elijah approached the main gate, Principal Davenport noticed him from the top of the entrance steps. He watched Elijah for exactly 4 seconds before descending the stairs. "Excuse me," Davenport said, stepping directly into Elijah's path. "Can I help you?" Elijah stopped. "Good morning. I'm here for the ceremony." Davenport looked him up and down. His eyes moved from Elijah's boots to his jeans to his jacket to the small gift bag in his hand. The scan took less than 2 seconds, but Elijah felt every fraction of it. "Are you with the catering company?" Davenport asked. "Deliveries go around to the service entrance on the east side." "I'm not a delivery person," Elijah said evenly. "My daughter attends this school. I was personally invited to the event." Davenport's expression did not soften. If anything, it cooled. "This is a private ceremony for invited guests only," he said. "We've had a lot of activity on campus today. Vendors, technicians, various service staff. If you don't have an invitation on you, I'm going to need you to wait here while I verify your identity." "My name is Elijah Turner. My daughter is Amara Turner, 6th grade. Dr. Langford invited me herself." Davenport did not reach for a clipboard. He did not pull out a phone. He did not radio anyone. I don't recognize that name, he said. And frankly, I know most of the families who were invited to this event. We've had some security concerns this week, and I take campus safety very seriously. I can't just let anyone walk in because they claim they belong here. Parents passing through the gate began to slow down. A woman in a camel-colored coat glanced over. A man with a press lanyard paused mid-step. I'm not claiming anything, Elijah said. His voice remained steady. I'm telling you my daughter goes to this school and I was invited. You could confirm that in 30 seconds. I'll decide what I confirm and when I confirm it, Davenport said. He straightened his tie. In the meantime, I need you to step back from the entrance. Elijah did not move. Sir. Davenport's voice dropped half a register. I don't know what kind of access you're used to, but this is Winthrop Academy. We don't just open the gates because someone shows up and says they belong. Now I am asking you, respectfully, to wait at the gate. A small crowd had now formed. 8, maybe 10 parents standing in a loose semicircle watching. 2 reporters angled their cameras. Elijah said nothing. He took 1 step backward. Davenport turned to the campus security officer standing near the tent, a young man named Kevin in a navy polo with a radio clipped to his belt. Kevin, I need you to hold this gentleman at the gate until I can get the police here to verify his identity. Kevin hesitated. Sir, he seems... Did I ask for your... assessment? Davenport said. Hold him here. Kevin walked over to Elijah with visible reluctance. I'm sorry, sir. I have to ask you to wait here. I understand, Elijah said quietly. You're doing your job. Inside the building, standing behind the lobby windows, 11-year-old Amara Turner watched her father being stopped, questioned, and held at the gate like a trespasser. She saw the security guard standing beside him. She saw the parents watching. She saw her principal, the man who shook her hand every morning in the hallway and told her class to always treat people with dignity, treating her father like he did not deserve to be there. She did not cry. She pressed her thumb against the silver pendant and watched. Her best friend, a girl named Sophie, stood beside her and asked what was happening. Amara did not answer. She could not explain what she was watching because she was still trying to understand it herself. All she knew was that her father, the man who packed her lunch every morning and helped her build a model volcano that actually erupted, was being treated like he had done something wrong by walking toward her school. At 10:31 a.m., Dr. Patricia Langford, chair of the Winthrop Academy Board of Trustees, emerged from the science building and looked toward the podium. The ceremony was scheduled to begin at 10:30. The seats were full. The microphone was live. The ribbon was stretched across the entrance, waiting for scissors. One seat in the front row was empty. Langford turned to the vice chair beside her. Where is Mr. Turner? No one knew. Langford walked quickly to the front entrance, her heels clicking on the stone pathway. She descended the steps, crossed the courtyard, and reached the gate in under a minute. What she saw made her stop. Elijah Turner was standing quietly beside the security guard, his gift bag resting on the stone ledge of the gate. Principal Davenport was 6 feet away, speaking into his phone. Parents stood in a loose cluster, some recording on their phones. Richard. Langford's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. What is going on here? Davenport lowered his phone. Patricia, I caught this gentleman trying to access the ceremony without authorization. I've called the police to... You called the police? Langford said. She did not raise her voice, but every syllable landed like a hammer on marble. You called the police on our guest of honor? The crowd went silent. Davenport blinked. Guest of... What are you talking about? Langford turned to Elijah. Her face softened immediately. Mr. Turner, I am so deeply sorry. I cannot begin to... She stopped, took a breath. Then she turned back to Davenport with an expression that could have frozen the Charles River. Richard, this is Elijah Turner. His foundation, the Turner Opportunity Foundation, is the sole donor behind the building you are about to dedicate. Every piece of equipment in that science wing, every scholarship we announced this year, the greenhouse, the STEM library, the research grants, all of it came from this man's personal philanthropy. He donated $4.2 million to this school after his daughter told him our lab equipment was outdated. He asked for no naming rights. He asked for no recognition. All he asked was that the scholarships include low-income families. And you have him standing at the gate with a security guard. The silence that followed was so complete that you could hear the wind moving through the ivy on the east wall. Davenport's face went through several stages in rapid succession: confusion, disbelief, recognition, and then something that looked like the ground opening beneath him. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. A mother in the crowd whispered to the woman beside her. A reporter lowered his camera and simply stared. Kevin, the security guard, quietly stepped 3 feet to the left as if trying to physically distance himself from what had just happened. Mr. Turner was supposed to be seated in the front row 15 minutes ago, Langford continued. He is the reason this ceremony exists. He is the reason your students have a building. And you treated him like a criminal because of what, Richard? Because of what he was wearing? Because of how he looked? Davenport finally spoke. Patricia, I had no way of knowing. You had every way of knowing, Langford said. You could have checked the guest list. You could have made a single phone call. You could have simply let a father walk through the gate of his daughter's school. Instead, you chose to assume the worst about a man you had never met. And you did it in front of 300 people and the Boston press. She turned to the crowd. I want everyone here to understand something. This is not what Winthrop Academy stands for. This will not be tolerated. She looked at Davenport one final time. Richard, step away from the podium. You will not be speaking today. And you will be hearing from the board on Monday morning. Davenport stood motionless for 3 seconds. Then he turned and walked away from the gate without another word. He did not return to the ceremony. He did not return to the building. By the time the ribbon was cut, his car was gone from the parking lot. Elijah did not watch Davenport leave. He did not react to the gasps of the crowd. He did not look at the cameras. He looked through the lobby window where his daughter was standing with her face pressed against the glass. He held up the gift bag and smiled. Then the door opened, and Amara came running out. She grabbed his hand with both of hers and held it tight enough to leave a mark. She did not ask what happened. She did not say anything at all. She just held on. Elijah looked down at her. You ready to go see the new lab? Yeah, Amara said. Let's go. They walked through the gate together, past the silent crowd, past the cameras, past the empty chair on the stage where the principal was supposed to have stood. Langford walked beside them, and neither she nor Elijah spoke until they reached the front row. The ceremony began 12 minutes late. When Langford introduced Elijah, she kept it brief. She told the audience that the building behind them existed because a father listened to his daughter. She said the scholarships existed because that same father believed every child deserved the same chance he had earned. She did not mention the incident at the gate. She did not need to. Every person in that crowd had either witnessed it or been told about it within minutes. Then Elijah stood at the podium. He was silent for a long time. Not the silence of a man who does not know what to say. The silence of a man choosing very carefully what is worth saying. "I'm not going to talk about money," he said. "I'm not going to talk about buildings or equipment or donations. I want to talk about something that happened today that my daughter saw." He paused. "My daughter is 11 years old. She is sitting right there in the second row, and she watched her father get stopped at the gate of her own school. She watched a man in a suit look at me and decide, in about 4 seconds, that I did not belong here. She watched security come over. She watched parents stare. She did not look away. She watched all of it." The audience was motionless. "I am not angry," Elijah continued. "I have been stopped before. I have been questioned before. I have been followed in stores and pulled over on highways and asked to prove that the house I live in is actually mine. I have a lifetime of experience with people who look at me and see a problem before they see a person. That is not new." He looked down at Amara. "What is new is that my daughter saw it happen in a place that is supposed to be safe, a place that is supposed to teach her that she matters, a place where she goes every day and trusts the adults around her to treat people with fairness." His voice did not waver. It did not rise. It stayed at exactly the same register, and somehow that made it land harder. "I built this building because my daughter told me her classmates deserved better. Not because I wanted my name on a wall. Not because I wanted a speech or a ceremony or a front row seat. I built it because I believe that when a child says something is broken, the adults in her life should fix it." He gripped the edges of the podium. "But today, my daughter also saw something broken that no amount of money can fix. She saw an adult decide that a black man in jeans does not belong at a school his own daughter attends. She saw what happens when assumptions replace decency. And now I have to go home and explain to her that the man who runs her school looked at her father and saw a threat." He paused again. The silence was absolute. "I want to say this to every child sitting here today. You are watching. You are always watching. You see how adults treat each other. You see who gets welcomed and who gets questioned. You see who has to prove they belong and who walks in without being asked. And what you see shapes who you become." He looked out across the crowd. "I do not want a single child at this school to grow up believing that dignity is something you earn by dressing a certain way or driving a certain car or having a certain amount of money in your account. Dignity is not earned. It is owed. It is owed to every person who walks through that gate, whether they donated $4 million or 4 cents. He stepped back from the podium. "Thank you for being here today. I hope this building serves your children well, but I hope even more that this school learns something today that cannot be taught in any laboratory." He returned to his seat. He took his daughter's hand, and the audience rose. It was not a polite standing ovation, the kind where the first row stands and the rest follow, out of social obligation. It started in the back. It started with a woman who had been recording on her phone the entire time. It started with a father who had watched the whole incident from the parking lot with his hands shaking. It built forward row by row until 300 people were on their feet, and the sound of their applause echoed off the walls of the building that Elijah Turner had paid for and never asked to be thanked for. Amara looked up at her father. He squeezed her hand once. That was enough. In the days that followed, the consequences arrived in the order they always do. First the silence, then the storm. 3 cell phone videos of the gate incident were posted online within an hour of the ceremony's end. The longest, 4 minutes and 11 seconds, filmed by a parent named Helen Marchand from behind the catering tent, captured everything from Davenport's first approach to Langford's public rebuke. It was shared over 2 million times in the first 48 hours. On Monday morning, the Winthrop Academy Board of Trustees convened an emergency session. By 11 a.m., they had voted unanimously to place Richard Davenport on indefinite administrative leave with an immediate prohibition from campus. A third-party civil rights consulting firm was retained to conduct a comprehensive review of the school's treatment of families of color over the previous decade. That review uncovered 8 formal complaints against Davenport filed between 2018 and 2024. Each complaint described a variation of the same behavior. Non-white parents questioned, ID checked, or redirected to service entrances during school events. Each complaint had been received by the school's administrative office, acknowledged with a form letter, and filed without follow-up. Not one had resulted in a conversation with Davenport. Not one had been reported to the board. The consulting firm's report, delivered 6 weeks later, concluded that Winthrop Academy had maintained a pattern of institutional indifference to discriminatory conduct by senior staff and recommended the immediate termination of Principal Davenport, the overhaul of the school's complaint review process, and the creation of an independent ombudsman position funded by a mandatory line item in the annual budget. Davenport was terminated in January. He did not contest the decision. He did not issue a public statement. His attorney released a 2-sentence response that acknowledged regrettable errors in judgment without using the word racism or the word apology. According to former colleagues, he relocated to a small town in Vermont and has not worked in education since. His LinkedIn profile was deleted within a week of the termination. The last anyone heard, he was managing a small property rental business. His name, however, remains permanently indexed in search results alongside the words Winthrop Academy and discrimination. The internet does not forget, and it does not forgive. The Turner Opportunity Foundation, following the incident, expanded its original commitment to Winthrop. In addition to the 25 existing scholarships, the foundation funded 15 more, specifically designated for students from families who had filed discrimination complaints with the school. Total scholarship funding exceeded $1.8 million over 5 years. Elijah Turner gave one interview about the incident. It was with a reporter from the Boston Globe, published 3 weeks after the ceremony. In it, he said, "I did not build that wing so that someone would treat me well at a ribbon cutting. I built it so that kids like my daughter would not have to beg for a working microscope. What happened at the gate was not about me. It was about what my daughter saw. That is the part that matters." The article was shared over 800,000 times. Winthrop Academy's new principal, Dr. Renee Okafor, the school's first black administrator in its 127-year history, was appointed the following September. At her first all-school assembly, she told the students, "Every person who walks through that gate deserves to be treated with the same respect, not because of who they might turn out to be, but because of who they already are." Amara Turner is now in the 8th grade. She still wears the silver pendant. She still touches it when she is nervous. And every morning, when her father drops her off in his 10-year-old Honda Accord, he watches her walk through the gate without being stopped. That is all he ever wanted. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you believe that no parent, regardless of what they look like, what they wear, or what they drive, should ever be treated like a trespasser at their own child's school, subscribe to our channel. We will keep telling these stories until every gate is open to everyone. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you have ever had to prove that you belong somewhere you had every right to be, tell us your story. Your voice matters more than you know.